Hello and welcome into Fantasy Focus. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. It is Thursday, November 2nd. I am joined by Field Yates as we do every Thursday. These two-man shows back and forth, Field, they're one of my favorite shows of the week because we just get to sort of hang out and talk ball for a little bit.
What could be better than hanging out, talking football with each other, Daniel? Oh, sorry, I almost knocked the table over here.
Not knocking the table over is where it starts, how it gets better.
That would be a good thing.
That's a good one.
I'm going to learn from my error and not do that again. Apparently, I've been packing on some muscle because I just gently placed my forearms on this table. Next thing you know, it's almost been knocked over. But big show today.
Dad strength, I think, is what I'm realizing.
Strength. It's real. It's real, my friend. Real. I'm telling you, there are things that I can do now that I could have never done 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's how that works. Did you get more dad strength with the second one? Like, does it keep going up every single time you have a child? Like Phillip Rivers, that's why he's basically unstoppable at this point.
That's a good point. That's a healthy debate.
That's a healthy
debate.
I will
have to stew on that one and answer it by next Thursday.
All right, fair. Yeah. Let's think about that a little bit. Guys, we got a big show planned for you today. We got Thursday Night Football. We have our part one of our Week 9 preview where we go through some of the lesser exciting games to make sure that we have enough time on Friday to get to the big stuff with Mike and Stefania that we want to. So
exciting
we'll dive into
to some, not as much to others.
If you're a fan of the team, it will be exciting. If not, we'll get through it. But, Field, with the lack of news that we have today, coming out of the trade deadline, it feels like we got all the news that we were going to get for the week. That was kind of the big thing here.
Agreed. So let's just dive in.
Yeah, let's just dive right into Thursday Night Football.
Yeah.
Because I'm excited to talk about this kid, Will Levis. Looked fantastic last week. Found DeAndre Hopkins. You know what? We said this before the show. I said this before the show. Yeah. Will Levis did the thing that I hope the Raiders do with Devontae Adams, because what he did is he went out there and he was like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to find my best wide receiver, and I'm going to throw the ball to him a bunch. And that worked out pretty well, both for DeAndre Hopkins and Will Levis. Now here in Week 9, 4 teams on a bye. Do you think that after 1 week, Will is a potential streamer here?
Okay, so I've got him as quarterback 13. So he is right there on the radar. So I'm not starting him in a 10-team league. Probably not starting him in a 12-team league as well. But if people in your league have multiple quarterbacks on their roster, maybe they have a Justin Herbert plus a Sam Howell, who we'll talk about more just a little bit later on in the show. If they have been hoarding quarterbacks, it could be a problem for you. So I think that there were elements of good fortune in Will Levis's game from last week. You're right. He did throw the ball to DeAndre Hopkins enough. He actually only threw the ball to him 5 times, though, last week.
Yeah, they were very efficient 5 times.
They were super efficient. So I think, and I'm not trying to take away from Will Levis's performance entirely, but I don't think you can replicate the model they had this past week. So what are the reasons for optimism? First of all, there's a fearlessness about him that is pretty evident.
Yes.
Second of all, Mike has told us in the past about you can attack these perimeter corners in Pittsburgh. The biggest concern that I have for Will Levis tonight is the Pittsburgh defense going to bottle up the Titans offensive line, because they have arguably the best pass rush duo in the NFL. Cam Hayward, by the way, comes back tonight. Will Levis be under duress, under siege in a way he was not in his first start? But I mentioned the fact that he was fearless.
Yes.
He was not afraid of throwing the football deep. And he ran the ball 7 times this past week, only for 11 yards. But Will Levis does have legit mobility. That was a part of his game. His second to last season in college. His last season at Kentucky, he was dealing with a toe injury throughout much of, maybe it was a calf injury, maybe both, throughout much of the year. So we didn't see a ton of running from Will Levis. Good enough athlete, enough confidence, and there are so few options this week that I have him as quarterback 13.
Quarterback 13. This kind of goes back to the conversation we had yesterday where you're like, yeah, the top, how many quarterbacks do you have?
8.
Top 8 quarterbacks you feel very confident with, and then that next tier is just like, ooh, buckle up. Maybe close your eyes. If you got to start them, you got to start them, but you don't feel nearly as confident about that middle tier as we do in other weeks.
I would say the exact same thing. Yeah, that's exactly where I'm at. We'll rehash that thought a couple of times throughout the show as we talk about other quarterbacks that I think fit into the same category that Will Levis is in. But the Titans may have found themselves something here. This is, I would imagine, a fairly invigorating day for Titans fans, thinking about the possibility of Will Levis going back-to-back in terms of quality starts. Maybe the clock will strike midnight around, 9:30 Eastern time tonight. But it's kind of exciting for Titans fans because Ryan Tannehill has been a really, really good quarterback for them for quite a number of years. But this team had kind of plateaued, or at least it felt like it 2 or 3 weeks ago when they were in London playing against the Ravens, and they went into their bye 2-4. That was not so fun.
Not great. If I was a Titans fan, I would be pumped, even if it's just 1 week, because you grab this guy in the second round. and you want to be able to see something. I think a lot of this team has sort of been, like you said, kind of stagnant, sort of reached a plateau. It's like, what's going to be the next thing here? Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins is not the future of this team, but at least here in week 9, Field, even though he only had 5 targets last week, he made all of them count.
Yeah.
Are you starting DeAndre Hopkins again this week?
I am. I've got him as wide receiver 17. I mentioned it a moment ago, but Mike has really highlighted how poor some of the perimeter cornerback play has been for the Steelers. It's part of the reason why Pittsburgh was one of the teams that was pursuing cornerbacks most aggressively just prior to the NFL's trade deadline. And Hopkins has 7.6 targets per game. Do the math of what that equates to over the course of a full season. That's like 130 or so. That's a great number for a player of DeAndre Hopkins' caliber, and he has at least 5 in every game. He's also had multiple games with at least 10 targets, so the volume has been good enough for DeAndre Hopkins. The big play upside was not there until last week, but at least it was a reminder last week that even at his advanced age of 30 years old, DeAndre Hopkins has enough juice to turn a couple of big plays in. Maybe not every single week, but every few weeks in the NFL. So I've got him as wide receiver 17, squarely in the mix to be started tonight.
I've got him at wide receiver 18, so I see it very similarly to you, Field. I think the only other guys that I would start from this game are the only other guy I would start from this team is Derrick Henry. It's Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins for me.
I'm the same way there.
I do want to say this, though. I think a lot of people went out and picked up Tajay Spears just in case Derrick Henry got moved at the trade deadline. I still think that I've seen enough from him, the explosiveness when Derrick Henry comes off the field, that like if you've got a spot on your bench, if anything were to happen to Derrick Henry, I'd still try to keep Tajay in spite of the fact that trade deadline has moved on and you're not going to get what you thought from him. But I still like Tajay Spears.
It'll be an interesting week ahead, and I don't want to get too far ahead because I love every week of the NFL season. But next week will be a real challenge for managers everywhere. We've got 4 teams on a bye: Kansas City, Philadelphia, Miami, and the Rams.
That's gross.
So you're going to have a lot of people that are staring down the barrel of, can I afford to keep Tajay Spears? Or
do I need to get someone else?
Do I need to clear out that roster spot? Because if I don't have, like, if I don't drop Tajay Spears, I will be starting nobody in my flex spot. So I hear you. I wouldn't be surprised. I would say that he has enough value that in a perfect world, I'm absolutely keeping him. But I can't wait to see the kind of well, I guess I can wait. But I'm telling you right now, as somebody who tried to manipulate my rosters a little bit this week in advance of next week, there are going to be some very precarious spots where you're trying to decide between, like, oh my God, like, can I even drop this player? Or am I at risk of dropping this player and if I drop him, like, am I never going to see him again? If the answer is yes, does it matter? So Spears is sort of in that category of players. Yeah. Because if Derrick Henry's playing,
very limited.
With the way that the winds have shifted of late, Tajay Spears is not a suitable starting running back in a 10 or 12 team league.
Correct. I am with you on that one. All right, let's talk Kenny Pickett because surprise, Field. I thought this was going to be the Mitchell Trubisky show, but no, sounds like Kenny Pickett is going to roll tonight. Yeah. How do you feel about this if you've got shares of either Deontay Johnson or George Pickens at wide receiver? Because we're not starting Kenny Pickett, right? I just want to say that up front. So this is going to be how it impacts the wide receivers. Do you think that this rib injury is going to be something that scares you away from these guys, or are you still in on them?
Doesn't make a difference to me for this reason. If Kenny Pickett at some point early in the game is dealing with that same pain, re-aggravates it, has to leave the game, insert Mitchell Trubisky, and I'm not sure the offense goes backwards. It might even go forwards a little bit. Okay. I feel good about both these players, though. George Pickens last week had just one catch. It happened to go for a touchdown, but obviously we know the big play upside with George Pickens, that kind of explains itself. He's wide receiver 22 for me, just a couple spots behind Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson this season has 8.7 targets per game. A little bit of context there. He's only played 3 games. Yep. One he left early. Yep. And the other one, another game, he was limited in his first game back after being on IR for 4 games. Yep. Last week, his first full game of the season,
how many targets?
Did he do? 14.
14 targets.
14 targets in his first full game. All right. And I think this is another night in which Pittsburgh's rushing offense is just not good enough that they can afford to rely exclusively on that rushing attack. So I've got Deontay Johnson inside my top 20 for wide receivers. And I'm sorry, 21. Could this be the night?
That he gets in the end zone?
Could this be the night?
Ooh!
Could this be the night, Daniel?
Field.
And I'm not going out on a limb enough to say that he is going to find the end zone because that hasn't happened since 2021. But I will tell you this, Daniel. The feelings have started to bubble up enough that I have in my Twitter/X drafts a tweet
ready to go
that alerts the masses that Deontay Johnson has scored a touchdown. I hope to be able to use it by the end of this season. If it happens tonight, everybody will know that I've been planning on it all day.
I love this. Please, I would love for you to get Deontay Johnson in the end zone for us, Field. I got so much Deontay Johnson in
Everybody wants this.
Yes.
Everybody wants it. He's gone 100 or so straight catches without a touchdown. That's unfathomable.
That is unfathomable.
It's crazy.
That's tough. That's really tough. I'm with you on starting both of these guys in part because Deontay Johnson, first week back, like we said, you kind of get reacclimated back to that back to that playing speed. But last week, 14 targets. How do you say no to that against this Tennessee Titans pass defense, right?
Yeah.
You got to start both of these guys if you have the option. And I am with you. If you got to start a Steelers running back, I don't feel good about it. Right now,
you shouldn't.
No, Najee Harris has not been great.
Yeah.
Jalen Warren has also not been great, but he hasn't felt as bad as Najee Harris because we didn't have the expectation that Najee had coming into the season.
It's kind of about how people feel in real life about the Steelers running backs.
Yes.
One guy's the undrafted free agent out of Oklahoma State a year ago who has exceeded all reasonable expectations.
Yep.
The other one is the 24th pick in the draft 2 years ago, who as a rookie had a legitimate, credible case for being the fantasy and the real life offensive rookie of the year.
Yeah.
That's how things have changed in terms of the tenor for these two players. So take your pick. I've got them ranked one spot apart from each other. And I've got Najee Harris, good dexterity right there by me.
Right there.
Najee Harris ranked one spot ahead of Jalen Warren. And frankly, Daniel, it's because I think he's the better bet to score a touchdown.
Yeah.
Do I have extensive proof of that this year? No. You know why? They've each scored one touchdown. But let me give you the raw numbers in terms of opportunities so far this season.
Okay, give it to me.
Najee Harris has 85 carries and 17 targets, which have been turned into 13 catches. So 98 combined carries and catches this year for Najee. Meanwhile, Jalen Warren has 45 carries, so the edge is 40 more for Najee.
Okay.
But he has 26 catches on 32 targets. So we're talking about basically a 2-to-1 edge for Jalen Warren as a pass catcher, basically a 2-to-1 edge for Najee Harris as a rusher.
Sure.
So I think generally speaking, targets are more valuable than rushing attempts for a running back. The reason why I lean towards Najee is just because I think if the Steelers do have goal line opportunities, the better bet to get those goal line opportunities is Najee Harris. But this has been kind of a fantasy wasteland for much of this season. It's been super frustrating, and I really like Najee Harris would be a player that if we did a mid-season, what the heck do you do with these players in Dynasty episode?
Yeah.
He might be the face, like the thumbnail that we put up on YouTube, because I don't know what to make of Najee Harris, who's in his third NFL season. And right now, you might be able to get for like a bag of donuts in Dynasty.
Yeah, seriously. And depending on what kind of donuts they are, because I'm all in on apple cider donuts, I might rather have the donuts rather than Najee Harris, if I'm going to be honest right now.
Those are great donuts.
They are really good.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Here's a stat about the Pittsburgh Steelers running backs.
Oh, God.
Between the two of them, they have a combined 3 games with more than 10 fantasy points.
What's the upside here? That's
None. There is no upside.
By the way, the Titans still an excellent run defense as well.
Yes, they are.
Again, I have 24 for Najee, 25 for Jalen Warren. Big part of the reason why those players are that high is you've got 4 teams on a bye, and think about some of the running backs that are not available this weekend. Maybe the second best running back, or the best in Christian McCaffrey, the second best
and Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, Travis Etienne. But Etienne. Running back 3 this past week, Jahmyr Gibbs also gone, right? I mean, like you've got 4 teams on a bye this weekend that are really, really condensing the running back rooms right now. Plus, Daniel, with all these teams that have these backup quarterbacks in play, you're a little bit worried about, even if you're starting a Cardinals running back, like what's the upside for an Amari DiMercato and a Clayton Tune-led offense against the Browns?
Seems low. Seems very low.
Then you've got timeshares like in Cleveland itself, right? Like, so that's why even as the negativity that has been spewed from our mouths about these 2 running backs in terms of their fantasy outlook continues, still RB24 and RB25 for me.
I think that is going to be, and we'll move ahead after this, I think that's going to be one of the things from this week. Given the fact that there are so many backup quarterbacks, how are fantasy managers emotionally going to say, you know what, I'd rather start this guy that might not be as good, but at least he's got a better offense, rather than saying I'm going to start this player, but he's got a backup quarterback that I've either never seen or I don't trust, and you're trying to figure out which side of this conversation do I want to be on. So I think it's going to be a really interesting one, given all the things you just laid out, Field. Are you taking the Titans in honor of our producer, David Presley, are you taking the Steelers in honor of our former colleague, DJ Gallo?
Ooh, wow, that is a tough one when you frame it that way.
Yeah, I'm making it personal here.
These are the two teams that befuddle me more than almost any other in the NFL. And here's a reason why. Like, Tennessee always finds a way to win games because Vrabel, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the Steelers, as we know, had this legendary streak of not finishing under 500 with Mike Tomlin as their head coach ever. He has never led them to a sub-500 record. They're 4-3 right now. They don't give me a whole lot of confidence.
Nope.
I'm sorry, Dave. I think the Steelers win because I'm concerned about the pass rush tonight.
Wow. All right. I just found out that actually Dave's girlfriend, Jenny, is a Steelers fan.
Oh, well, that is definitely the Steelers.
So in that house, it's going Titans against Steelers. Because you said Steelers Field, I'm going to go with the Titans.
All right.
For DP to make sure that we get a little bit of, maybe Will Levis. I'll tell you what, maybe he doesn't come back to earth. Maybe he's going to live in the clouds for another week. I'd be fine with that.
I mean, we'd be talking about him in a very different light a week from now. That's for sure.
We would. Hey, you know what we could use a little more of in our fantasy lives? A few more quarterbacks that we can trust on a week in and week out basis. So I would be fine right now. Yeah. All right, we're going to move ahead to our Week 9 preview in a second. But first, Field Jays, help us pay some bills.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
You know I would.
Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners and renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Do you smell that, Field?
What is that?
I thought it might be Mike Clay for a second, but no, it is the scent of fresh turf and freshly cracked Dr. Pepper, which can only mean one thing. It's college football season, baby. Block off your Saturdays. Swipe a sweet Dr. Pepper from the mini fridge because there's a new season of high kicks, long throws, and Fansville commercial breaks to carry you all the way to the West Coast games. That's right. The fans are back, and this year things are heating up. We're talking more hot takes, more heartbreak, more layers of face paint. Get ready to drink in all the drama this season with the help of the most delicious college football tradition there is, Dr. Pepper, the one fans deserve. All right, Field, diving into our Week 9 preview, Part 1. We're going to start with a couple of quarterbacks here because Sam Howell, 397 passing yards, 4 touchdowns last week against the Philadelphia Eagles. Now he gets the New England Patriots. Given all the quarterback talk that we just had, are you projecting that he's going to have another startable week for you here in Week 9, or would you rather go a different direction?
I'm going to go with quarterback 11 here for Sam Howell. So he's right on the border again. He'd be a very much a usable streaming quarterback. The optimism is that I think Sam Howell has legitimately played well this season. He has impressed me. They do have good weapons when they actually utilize them, like they did with Jahan Dotson last week. The Patriots' defense is solid, but not dominant because of some of their injuries and the fact that their offense has left them in compromising positions many times over so far this season.
Correct.
But I almost want to reverse engineer this to give you the reasons why I'm a little bit, like I'm not all in on Sam Howell as like a must start or like an easy streaming option. Like I have no concerns about him whatsoever.
All right, poo-poo it for me.
It's not poo-pooing it necessarily. It's just asking people out there, and I'll ask people and I'll ask you directly, is like take a moment and imagine what you expect this game to look like from a scoring output standpoint. Do you think it's more likely to be a 34-31 game or a 24-21 game?
I think it's going to be the kind of scoring game where I want to throw up in my mouth about halfway through.
Okay, so that's more 24-21.
Probably
then,
closer
right?
to that one, yeah.
And so if you look at the games in which Sam Howell has played, it's either been like not a shootout or a game in which he did not turn into a pumpkin because he turned into a pumpkin against the Bills, 37-3. He was awful. 4
interceptions. It was
terrible.
tough. Yeah.
All right, so the other games in which it wasn't like last week where it was a back-and-forth shootout with Philadelphia, they've actually had 2 of those so far this season. Weeks 1, Week 6, and Week 7. That was against Arizona, Atlanta, and the Giants.
Okay.
Sam Howell's output for those 3 games. 16.2, 18.3, and 10.5. That 18.3-point game was the one in which he had like 150 passing yards, but 3 passing touchdowns, right? So it's not like every single week Sam Howell's just been like carving up defenses, and the reason why his production has tapered off from a fantasy perspective is he throws a bunch of picks. No, there have been some games where the offense has just not gotten going, and I'm a little bit weary of that, so which is why I have him as quarterback 11 as opposed to quarterback 9.
Yep. I think I'm with you on a lot of that. The positivity that I see here, given the fact that middle range of quarterbacks I don't love, right? I'm basically trying to find where do I put Sam Howell within that second range of QBs this week. Yeah. Part of the thing that I default to is the fact that in spite of the up and down nature, he's been basically above 15 fantasy points at the quarterback position in all but 2 games this year. And those 2 games you mentioned, they were really bad. Yeah. So if we get bad Sam Howell, man, you just got to know that's on the table. There's an actual possibility that it can be that. But we've seen Sam, with the way that this offense works, be able to go out there. He's a good thrower of the football. He's able to find his wide receivers when this offense is clicking. So I understand all of that as part of why he's not also inside of my top 10. You're at a spot where, like, if you need to use him this week, you potentially can. There's some reasons why you can like him, but just like you said, there's also some reasons why again, we don't have him inside the top 10 and why we don't feel quite as confident.
It's a theme of this week. Even if
it's going to be that a lot.
It's going to be that a lot. And in a lot of weeks, we are not saying that our streaming options are inside our top 10. But what we are saying is that, hey, even though we can't squeeze this pretty impressive streaming option into our top 10s for week 7, we could see a really big game. It's just that there are other quarterbacks that are on a bye. But as we know now, with all of these injuries, right? I mean, not just the quarterbacks that are on a bye, but Kirk Cousins now being out, Kyler Murray still not being available, Deshaun Watson being uncertain. The fact that like Justin Fields has had some bright moments this year. He's not available. Like, just go through the list of quarterbacks that aren't available this week, not because of a bye. And all of a sudden, like, you're going to have weeks in which quarterback 11, 12, 13 sounds good when you're thinking about your rankings. Yeah. And then you see the player there and you're like, oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Like, really?
That's not this week. It doesn't feel great. All right. But what about with Jahan Dotson? Because you kind of mentioned him. Well, I mean, he's got 18 targets over the last 2 weeks. You like seeing that increase in volume. Part of my frustration is just that I need to see that production translate on the field to know that Howell feels like Dotson is a guy that he can count on. I just don't feel like that connection is fully there for me yet.
He's a sit for me this week. I've got him as wide receiver 41 because we haven't seen it enough.
41.
Okay. He's had 10 or more fantasy points in 2 games this season, both against the Eagles.
Both of them against
the Patriots. At last check, are not the Eagles. That has been confirmed.
Yep.
I think it's kind of a win-win, though, if you sit him.
Yeah?
And here's a reason why.
Okay.
Whatever success you've had so far this season has not been because of Jahan
Dotson. That's very fair.
So if your team's still, like, plowing along, you're either in the playoff mix or you're comfortably, in the top 3 or 4 of your league, you're not going to play him because you probably have a better option. If Jahan Dotson, so if he has another bad game this weekend, which of course that's been the case in 6 of 8 so far this season, you're like, okay, yeah, like last week really was a fluke. If he has a good game this weekend, Daniel, then you can justify and say, you know what, maybe I finally have something. Like, maybe Jahan Dotson will be usable for me going forward. But again, given the fact that he has had 2 good games this season, 2 out of 8.
Yep.
And because of the fact that this offense has been unpredictable, I have Jahan Dotson outside my top 40. If Curtis Samuel sits, maybe he bumps up 2 or 3 spots. Samuel missed yesterday's practice with a toe injury. If he misses on Sunday, maybe Dotson goes up a couple of spots. But wide receiver 41 in my current ranks.
Wow. I got to tell you, a quick shout out to Mike Clay. He just put out yesterday his NFL rest of the season strength of schedule.
Saw that.
Love being able to look at that. Washington, one of the tougher schedules going forward, which for me, with a rookie second-year quarterback, with an offense that we haven't seen him utilize these wide receivers quite as much, kind of like you're saying, I need to start seeing it before I trust it, especially knowing it's going to get tougher towards the second half of the season.
And I think Mike also noted the Patriots, one of the teams that have the opposite side.
Yes.
Mac Clay going off on Sunday.
Right. That's right. Very accurate.
We will talk more about that one on
We'll get some more Mac Clay.
I believe that. Yep.
Geno Smith. Field. I got to tell you what, I'm not starting Geno this week, and it's one reason and one reason only. Well, there's more than one reason. But there's one very serious reason for me.
Baltimore Ravens?
Baltimore Ravens defense gives up the fewest fantasy points to quarterbacks. It has been ridiculous how much they have just squashed quarterbacks. One guy has scored 20 fantasy points to get him so far this year. Do you know who it is?
Oh, God, it's probably somebody really rare. Was it Josh Dobbs last week?
It was Josh Dobbs last week. Good for you, Fields. Yes.
Right. But that was a game. That game, part of the reason why that happened was that the Cardinals had a late touchdown pass, late 2-point conversion, onside kick attempt that led to a last-minute drive. Like, a lot of things worked in their favor.
Yes. Okay, so without Josh Dobbs, no one else has done it.
How about this, though? They've allowed 96 total fantasy points to quarterbacks this season.
That's disgusting.
Only team under 100. For some perspective, Moorfield, the Mac Clay Fire, over 200 fantasy points. allowed by the Commanders so far this season to opposing quarterbacks.
Yep.
You are correct. So they have allowed, as I get, 96 in 8 games. How about this? The Ravens have more interceptions than total touchdowns allowed to quarterbacks this year, combining passing and rushing.
Wait a second. Say that one more time. They have more
intercepted more passes than they have allowed touchdown passes or rushing touchdowns.
No way.
Combined. Crazy. Moreover, Geno Smith, 12.0 fantasy points per game over his past 4.
This is not the Geno from last year.
He's playing better real-life football than he is fantasy football.
Yes.
But Geno Smith, I have him as quarterback 19 this week. Another reason why those guys that we're talking about as streamers without a whole lot of confidence are higher in our ranks, because you take away the injured quarterbacks, you take away guys like Geno Smith who are in terrible spots matchup-wise, and all of a sudden you're like, I guess I will start saying that.
You know, the way that you walk yourself into that is like, I don't feel good about it, but I guess I will start seeing him.
Well, I mean, why not, right?
Yeah,
I guess. Yeah.
I'd rather play him than Geno Smith, unfortunately.
Yeah.
This defense is just awful. I've got him outside my top 20 at quarterback, so we see it very similarly, just not that interested this week. However, other side of this game, Gus Edwards fields Yates. Back-to-back career days with 20 or more fantasy points. The dude is just doing everything he can to make us look silly based on where we're ranking him. Does this crazy efficiency that we have all of a sudden seen from Gus Edwards continue this week?
All right, I've got him as running back 18. So there's a part of me that I am saying...
You're at least hedging for a yes.
I am playing Gus Edwards this weekend.
Okay.
Even with Seattle's very good run defense. Here's the reason why. Other than week 1, and that was the game in which J.K. Dobbins played and got hurt.
Yep.
Gus Edwards has had 10 or more carries in every single game. The problem is this season, he's got 2 really, really good finishes, and then he's got 3 good finishes. 2 mean 1 awesome finish last week, obviously, RB3.
Yeah.
He has 5 finishes of RB35 or worse this season.
5 of his 9 games. Or has he had 8 because he had a bye week? So 5 of his 8 games is outside.
Only 8 games. They played 8 games. No bye week.
No bye week
for Baltimore. Yeah, they have a late bye. I think that's week 13 or 14. So
outside the top 35.
35 or worse. So that's the problem, is that, like, you know, you're talking about the downside of players like Gus Edwards, who, if you're looking for like a sliver of hope, like, he has seen a little more passing game utilization this season compared to prior years, but do not mistake Gus Edwards for Jahmyr Gibbs or Christian McCaffrey in that regard. So I have him as running back 18. I'm playing him, but I know that, like, part of the business that you are in when you have Gus Edwards on your roster is you could get 21.4 fantasy points, or you could get 6.14 fantasy points.
Yep. That's one of those. I'm looking at his box score right now, and it's like, 15 for 48, 6.9 fantasy points, 12 for 48, 4.8 fantasy points, 16 carries for 41 yards, 6.3 fantasy points. Like, again, just like we said earlier in the show, you have to, if you're going to start Gus Edwards this week, there's at least the knowledge that game could happen for you again. You cannot bank on another 20-point outing from Gus Edwards, because it has not been what has been normal for him. Still, though, with how bad this week is.
Yes, right. I was going to say, because remember, just a little while ago, we were talking about Najee Harris and Jalen Warren as running backs 24 and 25.
Sometimes it feels weird because it's like we're saying negative things about a player because I inherently don't want to play that guy.
Right.
But then you look at the rest of the room and you're like, but okay, I guess I am going to play Gus Edwards this week, just like the Sam Howell conversation.
That's kind of where we're at this week.
Sort of where it's at.
And again, it's going to get worse when there are either 6 teams on a bye, or next week when you have almost like a third of like the top 20 players in all of fantasy unavailable.
I don't want that.
Wild.
I don't want to play in a week like that, Field. This week, is there a chance? We don't know for sure yet on Matthew Stafford. Sean McVay has called him day to day.
Yep.
We're waiting to see if he can. A lot of this is not the same injury as Justin Fields, but the same kind of thing where it's about him, pain management, being able to hold the football, making sure that he's able to get back out there in the field. There's at least a chance that we will see Brett Rippon under center again. He got a little bit of run last week. If you see him as the starting quarterback for the Los Angeles Rams, is that going to impact your outlook of either Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua, or do you think they can both get enough volume to still be startable wide receivers?
Okay, both, right? Like, it's going to drop the projection for both of them.
So it's not mutually exclusive.
But not the point that I'm going to drop them out of my lineup entirely.
Fair.
I currently have them ranked as if Matthew Stafford will play. Cooper Kupp's at wide receiver 7. Puka Nacua is at wide receiver 10.
If Stafford didn't play, that moves him down, what do you say, like into
like 15 and 19, 15 and 20, somewhere in that range, because the volume is off the charts.
Correct.
In the 4 games that Cooper Kupp's been back, he's got 38 targets.
Oh, that's
nearly 10 a game.
That's pretty good.
Puka Nacua in those same 4 games, 37 targets. Off the charts. Mike has made this point a dozen times, but when they throw the football, it goes to one of two guys. Puka or Cooper Kupp. Brett Rippon was not inspiring last weekend, but 5 of his 10 attempts went to Cooper Kupp. Moreover, even if the Rams right now don't know whether Brett Rippon is going to play, whether Matthew Stafford's going to play, they're preparing Brett Rippon as if he will play, right? He's getting practice reps and he's getting, some camaraderie built with these players. Question for you, though. So that's my take on the 2 wide receivers.
Starting both of them, even if he's out, even if Stafford's out, we're still going to start both of them.
Of course, the outlook drops like precipitously enough where you might actually have drafted brilliantly and have a replacement for one of those 2 guys. More likely than not, though, you're still playing them both.
Correct.
Who is the Rams' newest practice squad quarterback?
I believe that the new Rams practice squad quarterback field is... Nope, I don't know. I was trying to think about it.
Dresser Wynn.
That's not a name. You made that up.
I made it up, but it's still actually a real person.
I don't know. Dresser Wynn?
Dresser Wynn. Former University of Tennessee Martin Skyhawk quarterback. Currently playing for the Edmonton Elks of the CFL. If it's cold here in Connecticut now, imagine how it is right there in Edmonton right now. He spent time with the Rams during training camp this past year. He is their new third-string quarterback.
Look at that. I just looked him up on the internet.
He's a real person.
He is a real person. I thought you were trolling me.
Win.
Wow, all right. Well, I'll tell you what. If Dresser Wynn starts tonight, how is that going to impact Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua?
No comment.
All right, we'll move on to the next conversation here. Wait, really quickly, Darrell Henderson. If you're choosing between these 2 running backs, I think Darrell Henderson is the guy I'm still going to default to over Royce Freeman. I just like him more in this backfield. The understanding of the offense that he has and the pass-catching ability that he has. I realized Royce Freeman got in the end zone. I think Royce Freeman got in the end zone last week. He didn't?
Nope.
Did he just have more fantasy points? What am I thinking of? I thought there was something that Royce Freeman
I'm
did.
sorry. Well, you know what? Here's the important part, Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman has the same number of targets this season as you and I do.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Royce Freeman has 0 targets over the past 2 weeks. But yes, you were correct. He did find the end zone last week.
For a touchdown. Yeah.
But
I would still go with Darrell Henderson, even though Royce Freeman got in the end zone last week.
Yes, he has 0 targets this season.
Yeah.
0. Henderson doesn't have a massive edge, but he has enough of an edge. It's pretty clear that if they're going to throw the running backs a football, it's going to be Darrell Henderson and not Royce Freeman. So I have Henderson as running back 20 this week, ahead of Royce Freeman, as he has more carries and more targets, as Freeman has none, over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah, taking on the Green Bay Packers. Green Bay has been able to be beat on the ground. I tell you what, I'm interested to see.
It's a weird team right now.
Interested to see. Hey, how about another offense that might have a backup quarterback under center? Let's talk about Yes, this one definitely will.
Yep.
Arizona Cardinals will be starting Clayton Tune this week field. We have not seen him. I'm interested.
Since his Houston days.
Right. I am interested when you are a guy that rosters either Hollywood Brown or right now it would be Trey McBride. We'll talk about him more too. But how confident are you feeling when you have to start a guy with a quarterback who has never played a professional NFL game?
Would you prefer me to start with McBride or Hollywood Brown?
Let's start with Trey McBride.
Okay, because he's a little more straightforward to me.
I think so too, because the tight end
by
position.
volume, he's in my top 10. I've got him as tight end 9. He had 14 targets last week.
Yep.
14. And if we have seen one thing from the Cardinals is that they love to throw the football to the tight ends this year. Moreover, and this is probably more anecdotal than statistically driven, but doesn't it feel like if you're a quarterback who's a young player making your first ever career start, what's a rookie quarterback's best friend? The old line, a tight end, right? Tight end. So I McBride confidently inside my top 10. Hollywood Brown I have as wide receiver 27 right now. And over the past 7 games, I'll toss away week 1.
Okay.
Over the past 7 games, Hollywood Brown has 63 targets. That's 9 a game.
That's a huge
9
number.
targets per game for a good player, right?
Yeah.
Obviously the touchdown upside is why he is limited relative to other players who might see comparable volume, target volume. But the 63 targets, 9 a game is good enough that even if that number is shaved by 1 or 2 with Clayton Tune, that's fine. Wide receiver 27 is a startable player for me.
Okay. So you're actually in on starting both of these guys this week in week 9 if you need to, even with Clayton Tune under center.
Even against Cleveland. Unless it's if Cleveland is like a blizzard or a torrential downpour situation on Sunday, which I have not checked the weather, then I would recalibrate my expectations a little bit. But yes, I would have pretty good confidence in starting Hollywood Brown this week. Wide receiver 27. I like him.
I think this is one of those situations where I appreciate your confidence.
Yep.
I think that there are going to be people that say, wait a minute, I'm going to start a wide receiver for a guy that's a rookie quarterback against one of the best defenses in the NFL and not feel like maybe there could be someone that I have behind him. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm saying that like this is that emotional hedge that fantasy managers are like, yeah, boy, which one do I want to do this week? Which one do I feel like if it doesn't go right, I'm going to be okay with like the decision that I made? Because there is something for me against this Cleveland Browns defense. Yeah, in spite of the fact that I love Hollywood Brown, I'm totally with you actually on Trey McBride because the tight end position is so thin as it is. If you're getting volume there, you got to start him. I have Hollywood Brown just outside my top 30 at wide receiver 31. I really don't see it that differently from you, but I think there's going to be questions that have to be answered from people where it's like, how much am I going to trust these uncertain quarterback situations?
So I look at the rankings right now and here as well. You have him as wide receiver 31. So 31. We're not that far off.
Not far off.
Okay.
No, we're similar.
I hear you.
But sometimes my rankings, like I'll still start a guy every once in a while that's lower than another guy in my rankings because I don't know what to say because I am emotional, Field, because fantasy is an emotional game. And sometimes it's like, you know what? I don't know if I can do this.
I would agree.
It's tough.
Clayton Tune's headshot has populated on our graphic right now. Ooh. What does Clayton Tune look like he does for a living?
He's one of those guys down on the tarmac that waves those.
Oh, really? I was thinking that Clayton Tune has definitely offered to manage my money at some point.
He also kind of looks like Mr. Beast a little bit.
Wow.
Like
wasn't Mr. Beast at a game recently?
He was at Tampa.
Tampa, that's right. Yes,
he was.
He met Jeff Darlington.
Yes, he did. Yeah, that's a guy. That guy is running the internet right now.
He is.
All right, let's dive into a few more conversations here before we close this thing.
All righty, let's do it. Yeah.
Do you think the Texans are a three-headed running back by committee with both Andrew Beck and Devin Singletary and Dameon Pierce?
I think the third that you're referencing, well, the fourth then will be Mike Boone.
Oh, okay. I was thinking of Andrew Beck because he got in the end zone rather than Dameon Pierce last week.
All right, so yes, the answer is yes. It's a running back by committee right now.
You want to stay away from this?
Well, with one exception possibly.
Oh, okay.
Dameon Pierce missed practice yesterday. If Dameon Pierce is out, I'd feel better about Devin Singletary.
Sure.
Don't know how serious the injury is. We'll find out more today and then, of course, tomorrow. But I've got Dameon Pierce, assuming he plays, is RB34 right now. Over his past 3 games, he's averaging 5.7 fantasy points per game. The efficiency is terrible. The passing game utilization is minimal. Mm-hmm. This is a throwing football team. Mm-hmm. Devin Singletary has been better. That's why I have him ranked higher than Dameon Pierce, even if the volume edge is slightly in Dameon Pierce's favor. But this is, if we were sitting there, if we opened the show talking about how Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris are running backs 24 and 25, and in a perfect world, we would start neither of them.
Yeah.
How do you think I feel about running back 30 and running back 34?
Probably even worse about it, Field.
You do. You do.
In part because they're also taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are sort of pretty good against running backs.
They are. And the thing with Dameon Pierce is this is season long. I mentioned the past 3 weeks, 5.7 fantasy points per game.
Yep.
As Mike has mentioned, 0 top 12 finishes this year. And in the 6 games that Dameon Pierce has played, 2/3 of them, 4 out of 6, have been outside the top 40.
Wow.
So we're talking about when he misses to the point that he is unusable.
Man. Field, I am looking right now at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense against running backs. I'm gonna name 4 guys here.
Okay.
Alvin Kamara scored 21.4 points against him. He's really good. DeAndre Swift scored 14.8.
Yeah, he's good.
Tyler Algier scored 14.2. He's all right, but 14.2. And then Alexander Madison scored 13.4.
Yeah.
Those are the only 4 running backs so far this year to score more than 10 fantasy points against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah.
This is one of those situations where with an offense that already is struggling to run the football, it gives you a lot of hesitation, which is why if Dameon Pierce is out, maybe you feel better about Devin Singletary because if it's a committee, forget it. Yeah. I'm totally out if it's a committee.
If Pierce is out, I will have Singletary as a top 25 play.
And you're not going to feel good about it, but given the situation,
I'll feel okay. I will feel okay.
All right.
He's actually impressed me so far this year. I just have 0 intel right now as to whether this Dameon Pierce thing is real, if it's load management, if it's a no big deal thing. We'll find out more today and hopefully more certainly by Sunday morning.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. Check out Fantasy Football now. 10:30 a.m. or 10 a.m. on Sunday morning.
Yeah, this is a good reminder.
There's a lot going on Sunday.
I believe, and you can correct me, fill in the blanks here.
Yep.
10 to 10:30 on Sunday morning.
Correct.
ESPN 2.
Correct.
We take a break for an hour and a half.
Surprising. We don't usually do that, Field.
That's never happened since I've been doing the show, and I've been on the show for, I think, 7 or 8 years now.
Yep.
90-minute break. We come back at noon. on ESPN2?
I believe we are on ESPN2. I was wrong also. We are on ESPN News from 10 to 10:30, and then back at noon. We totally
screwed this up. Okay, let me do this one more time. You know what? If you're listening right now, just pretend like we said nothing for the past 30 seconds. 10 to 10:30 a.m. Eastern time on Sunday morning, we're on ESPN News.
Correct.
From 10:30 to 11:55, very specifically, we are off. From 11:55 to 1, we are back on ESPN News.
So there you go.
We know this is very different than what people are accustomed to. People have viewing habits. They are used to things like watching us on ESPN2. There are things that are both above our pay grade and out of our control. This is one of those. If there was ever a week where you can go take an hour and a half off and go watch some football, this will be it.
This will be it.
Or go watch, Sunday NFL Countdown or anything else on the ESPN airwaves. We're going to do our best to jam-pack as much information in 1 hour and 35 minutes of showtime.
And in between there, I think there's a Germany game for us to watch. Is there not? No, there is not this week.
Yes, there is.
Is there?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Chiefs Dolphins.
That's right. This is just the game of the week, Chiefs Dolphins. Sorry,
Yeah,
I was thinking of next
season.
week. You're right. That's my bad. So that'll be something. That'll be different. But make sure you come back, check in on Fantasy Football Now, because we will let you know as far as Devin Singletary, Dameon Pierce, the rest of this Texans backfield, as well as a bunch of other injuries that we have. All right, let's talk about the Saints. Because I'm looking at a situation here where I feel like the wide receiver that I should be starting is Chris Olave.
It is. It's going to remain that way. Don't
talk me into it, Field. Talk me into it.
I mean,
I realize. Just pretend like I'm the dummy on the internet that's like, I want to say.
I'm trying to think of it like this. Like, if there was we call it a single die, not a dice, right? It's dice is two, die is one.
Yep.
That's been confirmed. Shows you how much I know about stuff. If there was a die that had die have 6 sides, right? It's a square. Okay, six sides.
I mean, there's a lots of different kinds of dies. I use up to the 6th one is the one that you play with Monopoly, which is probably what
you got it. Right. Monopoly die.
Yeah.
If 4 of the 6 sides were actually the number 2, and then the other 2 sides were the number 5 and number 6, and you wanted to predict the most likely outcome, you would expect number 2 happen the most, right?
Correct.
Okay. Every once in a while it's going to land on 5 or 6 though, right?
Correct.
That's the New Orleans Saints with Chris Olave as opposed to the New Orleans Saints with Rashid Shaheed and Taysom Hill. Chris Olave this season has 77 targets.
Yep.
It's more than twice as many as Rashid Shaheed.
Yep.
That's more. It's almost 4 times as many as Taysom Hill. Now, I know that Taysom Hill runs the football a little bit, but stick with Chris Olave, man. Like almost 10 targets per game. That's a massive, massive number. And for as bad as it's been this year, still pacing for over like about 1,100 yards. We just need more touchdowns for Chris Olave.
Yes, we do.
We just need them. And once we get those, everybody will be feeling a whole lot better about a guy who is unbelievable. He's so talented. And maybe they turned the corner a little bit last week with a good offensive performance to kind of get back on track. Maybe that's what you're looking for. But yes, trust the volume with Chris Olave. And if you're playing Rashid Shaheed or Taysom Hill, just know that you are rolling the dice in a significant, significant way. Rashid Shaheed, this season, last week you saw that 24.3-point effort. Mm-hmm. That was awesome. 4 of his 7 finishes this year have been outside the top 50.
So he's
now
like
the other 3 are into the top 10
receivers.
I'm sorry, the top 12 are the other 3.
Okay,
so like
it's total boom or bust.
There's no
middle.
definition of boom bust. No players are more boom bust in fantasy this season. But we're talking about downside. That is downside right there. Like you are playing Rashid Shaheed if you are a heavy underdog.
Yes.
And you're crushed by bye weeks this week, and you're like, I need somebody that can overcome a 25-point Mike Clay deficit in the projections.
Definitely.
That's Rashid Shaheed.
He's not a floor play for you.
Now, meanwhile, Taysom Hill, actually more playable because he plays tight end.
Yep.
He's been a top 6 tight end in 3 straight weeks.
If you need 8 fantasy points, Taysom Hill is the guy you want, not Rashid Shaheed, because there's a chance Rashid Shaheed doesn't get there. But if you need 25 fantasy points, I feel like Rashid Shaheed is my guy.
I still don't, but yes, I agree there. I'm still not totally certain though what I can expect out of Taysom Hill because Juwan Johnson returned last week.
That's
after
true.
back-to-back games with 13 total targets prior to the Juwan Johnson return, Taysom Hill had 1 target last week.
Yikes.
Now he had 9 carries.
He running the ball? Yeah, okay.
So
but he's got to get in the end zone in order to really pay that off.
If he's going to be just a runner, he must be a touchdown maker as well.
Yeah.
I would imagine with Juwan Johnson's now still in the mix, that will be the formula for Taysom Hill going forward. He will run the ball more than he catches the ball, and maybe occasionally throw the ball as well. But yes, I've got Rashid Shaheed outside my top 40 for wide receivers, and I've got Taysom Hill actually fairly startable this week, just because tight end. Pretty much.
I got to tell you, anytime I got to consider starting Taysom Hill, I don't feel good about it. It's just like, of course, you know what? He's done so well the last couple of weeks. Of course, this is the week that he's going to come back and not do anything. I feel like that's what happens whenever I put Taysom Hill in my tight end spot.
He's going to be your Gabe Davis of tight ends.
That's exactly what it is. I want to read this fun tweet.
Okay.
And by fun, I mean maybe not quite as fun.
Okay.
Scott Barrett put out earlier this week. Since week 12 of last season, Chris Olave has 112 targets and 799 receiving yards. Rashid Shaheed has 64 targets and 856 receiving yards.
I know. It's nuts.
It's unreal that Chris Olave almost has twice as many targets and still Rashid Shaheed has, like, what's going on here?
It's wild.
How lucky is Chris?
Do we need to do some energy? Do we need to give some energy towards the Saints, like we did the Raiders?
I think so. Part of me feels like this is a situation, and hear me out when I say this, so don't hear it the wrong way, but like I think Chris Olave should be really thankful that Garrett Wilson has struggled because Aaron Rodgers got hurt. Because we came into the season talking about, like, I know we all loved Garrett Wilson, but like Chris Olave also was fantastic last year. We were talking right there. And I think Chris Olave's season has not looked as bad as it has, in part because the guy that we would always compare him to was a guy who's also unfortunately having a very difficult season in spite of the volume that he also is getting. These guys are like each other.
I would say this, though. If you live in New Orleans, if you're a Saints fan, there's been a lot of wrath spewed at that offense. So maybe it feels
changes,
a little bit of. Oh, I mean, they would have changed their offensive coordinator, 10 years ago if they could. But that is not going to happen.
Yeah.
By the way, a little bit of news before we wrap things up here.
Yeah.
This is, and we'll talk about this obviously much more tomorrow. Deshaun Watson says, quote, "Not sure if he'll be able to play on Sunday against Arizona." I had been led to believe a couple of days ago that Deshaun Watson was more likely than not to return this weekend. That was a Monday estimation, though.
Okay.
So I wouldn't be surprised if that has changed 12 times since then. You know why, Daniel? Why? Because I've been alive for the past month, and I've watched this. So we'll see with Deshaun Watson. We'll vet that one out a whole lot more tomorrow on our Friday show.
Those checks keep cashing even if he's not playing games, right?
They are still fully guaranteed. Yes,
still fully guaranteed.
Yeah.
All right.
He could be cut right now, and he would still get the rest of that money guaranteed.
That's a tough one. All right, that's going to do it for us today, Field. We're going to save the rest of it tomorrow. We want to make sure Mike and Stefania can be here to weigh in on everything. One of the things, though, that we want to tell you guys, go check out the score report this week. Had a ton of fun doing some things. We did a really fun skit kind of based on the Blair Witch Project. I realize Halloween is past us, but it was very fun. So go check that out and call the score report hotline. You can see it at the bottom of your screen if you are listening to the show right now. It is 475-295-1648. I love being able to take your questions. And every Friday after the show, I go onto the Fantasy Focus TikTok. I answer a bunch of you guys' questions for 20 to 30 minutes. So check us out on TikTok. Also, Stefania Bell, Answering the Bell, has come out right now on the ESPN and NFL YouTube page. Go check out the big show that she just did on Anthony Richardson's injury. Go check that out right now. Again, on the NFL on ESPN YouTube page, which is youtube.com/ESPN NFL. Field, that's going to do it for us.
I just want to get that number somewhere because that's actually Daniel's personal cell phone number.
Stop it. Yeah, you can just text me right there to that.
If you have thoughts on the Lions offense during the bye week, please text them to Daniel's way. That was fun.
And some dating questions.
Really?
Yeah, I love getting the dating questions.
You're like Rosillo Life Advice.
That's sort of
back
like
at
that.
ESPN.
Yeah.
All right, there you have it.
A little bit of that.
All right,
we
we'll
love
talk to you
guys. We'll be back tomorrow. Have fun doing your Thursday Night Football. We'll see you on Friday.